Alright folks, Spire of the Watcher, the new dungeon in Destiny, has been out for about a month now, and if you come to this video, you're probably looking for a way to solo or solo flawless this. You've seen a lot of Giga Chads, one phasing things, and you're just an average Joe normal player just trying to hang out and maybe kill some aliens in your spare time, but you want to get this triumph done. This video is going to show you how anybody can solo flawless this dungeon. Instead of an 8-minute video that is designed to placate the YouTube algorithm and just farm clicks, or just throwing up a recording of your entire run with no context, no information, and no help to you, I'm going to be giving you concrete strategies on every encounter so that you know how to do it. In addition, I'm not going to use any raid weapons, no raid exotics. All the gear can be earned solo, and I'm going to give you multiple options so that you can find the best fit for getting your solo flawless done. I posted a video about 2 weeks ago for the Titan on how anyone can solo flawless this dungeon, and I'm going to take into consideration the comments and questions that people had. By the way, if you watched that previous video, you helped to make it one of the top solo flawless guides for this dungeon, so thank you. Now that we've done Titan, it's time for our hunter brethren to get their shot at doing the solo flawless version of the dungeon. Warlocks, I didn't forget about you. Your guide is coming out as soon as I can get it done, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that or any other Destiny 2 content. Let's talk loadouts and gear, everything you need to bring with you into the dungeon, kicking off with the artifact mods. The weaken clear mod is one that you definitely need to have when you're using a grenade launcher. When you damage a boss or you break a combatant's shield, it reloads your stowed weapons and weaken the combatant. We're going to use this for reloading some of our heavy weapons and doing damage. Also, I would recommend that you bring the solo operative class item mod. While you're the only member of your fire team, you do increase damage to combatants. Now, I get a lot of questions. MANO, do I have to have this mod? No, you don't, but it's going to make the boss phases much longer if you don't have these two mods on. It goes from 4 to 5 boss damage phases to something like 8 or 9. It's not worth it. Get those two mods before you go and attempt it. Frankly, after the week of Iron Banner that we've had, I'm doing whatever I can do to keep my sanity, and I suggest you do the same. Since we're using weakened clear, we're going to be using 2 grenade launchers. Wither Horde with the Break the Bank perk is definitely one of the mainstays of Destiny 2. The fact that it does damage over time and continues to keep that weaken clear effect going on is top tier. Now, it's even better if you have the Wither Horde Catalyst. When you holster the weapon, it automatically reloads. But if you don't have Wither Horde and you need another option, go into the Dares of Eternity, pick up the Pardon Our Dust grenade launcher. If you can shape it and craft it, smack on enhanced auto loading and blinding grenades. Blinding grenades is going to be really good in certain sections, especially if you're someone who is struggling with supplicants. And honestly, if you've got basic auto loading, that will do the trick too. Let's talk about primary weapons. If you can get some weapon with Volt Shot on it, especially the Akelous SMG from this season, it's very easy to farm. A lot of people have already crafted, but especially if you are struggling with supplicants in the ending boss room. The fact that you can reload the weapon and jolt targets and electrocute them, you can actually keep them from exploding. It's a really good choice. After that, having a decent funnel web, it doesn't matter what the role is. I have a couple of different ones here. I primarily just use the one with the PvE role with Frenzy, or if you want to use Callus Mini Tool, if you've got that crafted. Some Giga Chads really like using Retrace Path, a trace rifle. It has really long range and you can really easily tap all of the nodes that are required, but it uses special ammo. So if you're not experienced with it, I would recommend just using a normal SMG. Now, if you have access to Season of the Haunted, the Bump in the Night rocket launcher is going to be your best choice for boss DPS at the end as a solo player. It has enhanced auto loading, it's an aggressive frame which does insane damage, and it comes with enhanced frenzy. It's a really solid choice. It is not free to all players. You do need to have Season of the Haunted, but it is by far one of the best DPS weapons in the game. I actually talked about it a month ago when no one was talking about it, and then everyone started making videos about it. It was really funny. But if you don't have Bump in the Night, if you play a little Crucible, you can get something that's similar in the Blowout rocket launcher. While it's not an aggressive frame, you can get Frenzy on it, you can get Field Prep, you can get really good rolls on it, and all you have to do is play Crucible, so that is free to all players. Next up, we need a weapon that does an insane amount of critical hit damage, and that's going to be the Taipan. Again, this is a weapon that is free to all players, and you can craft it I've got one with triple tapped Focus Fury, and the most important thing is the interaction between the Viced Stinger and the triple tap perk. With the Viced Stinger perk, if you damage an enemy, it has a small chance to reload the magazine all the way. Combine that with triple tap or enhanced triple tap, and you can do a massive amount of damage. Now, you don't want to use a Taipan with firing line because you're not in a fire team with other people, right? So you're not going to get any damage difference. Instead, use triple tap Focused Fury. If you're a Giga Chad and you've got the Cataclysmic with bait and switch 4 times a charm, you'll do even more damage and it will be insane, but not everyone has access to that raid weapon. So instead use Taipan. In fact, Taipan can actually be a little bit better with the build that I'm going to show you. Next up, have a sword just for platforming. It doesn't need to be anything special, but I know that there's a lot of people that struggle with platforming. Having the sword out, even if it doesn't have any ammo, will allow you to see yourself in third person and will make jumping significantly easier. All right, it's builds time. This is talking about exotics and their interaction with your subclass. For your Arc Strider, if you choose to use that, you can use any of the fragments that buff up your resilience or jolt targets. That's going to be really, really nice. But the most important thing is to have the aspect of lethal current. After you dodge your next melee attack, it has increased lunge distance, jolts the target, and creates a damaging aftershock. This is really good, especially if you're dealing with the supplicants. You can then get flow state when you defeat a jolted target. It makes you amplified, which helps you move farther and faster. Pair that with the Akelous SMG with Volt Shot, and you can clear out tons of enemies, along with Assassin's Cow. When you use this, powered melee final blows grant invisibility and restore a portion of health and shields. Finishers and final blows against more powerful targets increase the duration of the invisibility and the amount of health and shields restored. This is massive if you are having issues surviving in any aspect of the final boss room with the supplicants or anything else like that. You can go invisible, move really easily. It's a really nice exotic to have. When I'm ready to do boss damage and I'm set to go, I switch over to Star Eater Scales and I charge this up. Basically, when you have your super energy completely full and you pick up orbs of power, it overcharges your super and it does more damage. With the Gathering Storm super that you have with the Arc Strider, it is really, really good for boss damage, especially in this dungeon. Probably one of the best damage options you can get for the hunter. You can mix and match your fragments to whatever you'd like, but I'd really recommend that you have the highest resilience you can and make sure you can do whatever you can to jolt targets. If you can create ionic traces as well, that works great too in helping to stay alive, keep moving, and using the Arc subclass to your advantage. All right, let's talk about the Void subclass. If you've got Gerfalcon's Hauberk, your Void weapons gain volatile rounds after you emerge from being invisible. When you're invisible and defeat combatants with the Vanisher, all of your weapons gain bonus damage. This is a great exotic if you can get it. If you have not gotten it, make sure you go into a lost sector and pick it up. It is great to have on a Void subclass. If you are finding that you are having issues surviving, put on Akelous. You gain a second smoke bomb charge and you have damage resistance when invisible. If you're having issues moving around or having issues staying alive, this is a really good exotic if you are struggling with that in particular. With the Night Stalker, I'm going to be using the Mobius Quiver so they can do more damage. I'm going to use Echo of Obscurity so that when I do finishers, I get to be invisible. I use Echo of Reprisal in some situations because it'll give me more super energy, and then Echo of Remnants, which will allow my void abilities like grenades and staying invisible to last longer. But I can also let my grenades weaken targets with Echo of Undermining. You can mess around with these a little bit and get those more attuned to your playing style, but the biggest thing is to make sure that you have Vanishing Step and Trapper's Ambush. Those two things together will allow you to stay invisible along with the Gambler's Dodge, not the Marksman's Dodge. That way you're dodging next to enemies and you get your grenade charge for your melee back and you can go invisible. Mobius Quiver is going to work great, especially for boss damage. If I choose to use Void, I switch on to a legendary chest piece and then put on Orpheus Rig so that I get an extra shot with my Mobius Quiver with that. I will do a lot more damage with the Mobius Quiver in that regard, and it will work a little bit better than Deadfall just in terms of pure DPS as a solo player. To wrap up our loadouts, we need to talk about the mods that you need to have on your armor. I'm going to try and keep it simple for solo players so that you don't have to do too much or switching between too many screens. I really recommend that you've got Harmonic Siphon on so you can generate orbs of power that will help you get your super back, and then using Reaping Wellmaker. After you activate a class ability, your next weapon, Final Blow, will spawn a Void Elemental Well. You can use that on any subclass, and you're going to pair that with Well of Tenacity. When you pick up a Void Elemental Well, it reduces the damage you take from combatants for a short period of time, so you get some enhanced resistance, and most importantly, you can use this setup on any class. It doesn't matter if you're using a Void class, a Solar class, Arc, or Stasis, it doesn't matter. These mods all work the same, so that when you pick up those mods, you'll get the resistance. So if I want to switch to Arc Strider, it's not a big deal. I can use those two mods and I don't really have to switch too much. In regards to keeping things simple, I'm going to be using Elemental Charge to become charged with light and then take advantage of high energy fire. Basically, when I pick up a well, it doesn't matter what kind it is, I'll become charged with light, but if the elemental well matches my subclass, so like Void and Void, I'll gain 2 stacks of charge with light. I match that up with high energy fire on any of my chest pieces, and that will help me do more damage to the boss. Now, I also have Void specifically on because you can put on the Void Resistance mod, and then I can take more damage from a lot of the Void enemies in this dungeon where there are a lot. If you're comfortable with it, you can certainly use Font of Might, where you pick up an elemental well that matches your subclass type. You'll get a boost to weapon damage of that type as well. So if I'm all spec'd into Void, I can actually put on Font of Might and then do more damage with Void weapons. Really good for the Taipan that I was mentioning earlier. Now you can extend this with a Stasis piece of armor. You can put on Elemental Time Dilation if you want to. A lot of people use this on their class items. But if you start to mess with that, then you mess with some of the solo mods, the Weak and Clear mod. All in all, I think it's just more complex, and it can get you into trouble if you're not used to it. I see a lot of times there's Giga Chads that switch lots of different pieces of armor to Font of Might, but a lot of people don't have that option because they're on console and they can't load their inventory that quickly. Just stick with high energy fire and elemental charge. It will make things a little bit easier, especially if you're not used to Font of Might. Finally, we have a weapon that is not required, but boy howdy, it makes things so much easier. Trinity Ghoul is amazing because it is a bow that allows you to chain arc energy to multiple enemies. I use this to clear out tons of enemies really quickly, and it's an exotic weapon, so when I switch to it and get lots of kills, it will actually have a small chance to generate heavy ammo. As always, these are suggestions, but I do think it's going to make the dungeon a lot easier. Speaking of the dungeon, how do you actually do it? Let's start by opening the door, the very first encounter of the dungeon. The basic mechanic is kill a Void Conduit Minotaur, then you're going to stand in the pool of arc energy. That's going to give you Arctrition, which is the buff on the left-hand side of the screen, and then you'll be able to charge up and connect different nodes. The timer starts at 30 seconds, and every time you hit one of the nodes, it extends the Arctrition buff by about 5 seconds. Now, you'll notice that I am not activating the final node in the sequence, and that's because if you do, it will spawn supplicants. Instead, follow the path that you see on screen and activate all the different nodes. In this way, you'll be able to keep your Arctrition buff the entire time through, and you won't have to deal with supplicants. I would say you don't really need to fight any other enemies. You can run by them or go invisible, but you can always throw a grenade here and there if you're in your way. And again, if you're ever in trouble, since you're on Hunter, you can just go invisible and run by them. If you're having trouble finding all the different nodes, or this is too fast for you, if you go to the bottom right-hand corner of your YouTube player, you can change the speed of the player and actually slow things down so you can figure out where all the locations are. The biggest tips in this section: don't worry about fighting the enemies. Just run by them, go invisible. If you spend your time killing all the enemies, they're just going to respawn a little bit later on. No reason to fight them. Just go activate the nodes, run by them. Unless if you're severely under-leveled, you're not going to get damaged by them quite a bit. And again, you can always just spam your invisibility, get your health back, and keep moving. Honestly, this is the easiest class to do this on, and once you're all done, you can shoot the 4 final nodes and you don't have to fight any of the supplicants. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now that we've opened the door, we need to fall down the long elevator shaft, and you can use these side railings over here to make sure that you don't die, especially if you have too much momentum. When you get to the bottom, you'll die. You can always pull out your sword and block at the end as well. This will negate some of your momentum, but also it will give you some damage, so just be careful. I'm going to speed up through this path and show you where you need to go. There are a couple of AVARICE recordings in this section. If you need to slow it down, again, click the gear and choose your playback speed. But I conducted a poll asking if I should keep this stuff in or if I need to take it out, and the vast majority of you wanted me to leave it in. So I'm going to meet in the middle. I'm going to speed up these sections for brevity because a lot of people have already done this before, but I will leave it in for anyone who's doing it and wants it as a resource. The difference is I'm going to speed through it and sometimes cut out a couple of sections that are super self-apparent, but I'll leave timestamps so that if you want to click to any section or if I need to call out anything, I can do that. Speaking of which, a section I should call out right here, the jumping puzzle. If you're struggling at this point at any time, pull out a sword. I'd recommend you have stompies. You don't need to have them, but if you do, it will make this jumping puzzle significantly easier. For me, I kill these harpies that spawn up in this section here, so I don't have to fight them when I'm doing the hardest part of the jumping puzzle. There are a couple of skips for this, but again, I'm assuming you're not a Giga Chad, and I'm going to assume that you're going to do it the normal way or pick up the secret chest and the recordings. Here's a perfect example of using your sword to orient yourself on that platform, on that upper edge where the wire connects. This is the hardest jump right here for Hunter coming up. Again, having a sword out will help you gauge your distance. You need to fall a little bit farther than you think before you initialize your first jump. So if you die, it's possible that you just jumped. Just fall off the edge and then wait until the last moment and then initialize your jumps, and then you're good to go. You've got an AVARICE recording around the corner here, plus a secret chest. A quick note that if you've never done the dungeon before, this will not give you any loot. It will only give you loot that you have previously earned inside of the dungeon. So if you're someone who's trying to farm, like say for example, the cowboy hat or something like that, that chest won't give it to you. You actually have to complete encounters first. Follow the path here, kill these enemies, and then there is a recording to the left-hand side of this platform that you want to jump to. Jump close to the elevator so you can make the jump. It will make things much easier. Go in the lift and follow the path. Nothing too crazy about this. When you get up to the rally flag point, turn to your right. There will be another AVARICE recording, and then go up to the next section, which is the first real encounter. The Ascent is exactly the same as opening the door. You kill a conduit minotaur, and then you shoot all of these different nodes that are located throughout the map. You can choose to attack the enemies or not. It doesn't really matter, but they will continue respawning. I take out large groups that are annoying, but basically to speed through this, I just activate the nodes as quickly as I possibly can. Do not shoot the final nodes because just like opening the door, in this section, it will spawn up a large Hydra, which will try to snipe you, and you don't need to activate that last one until the very end. Again, if you have any questions on the path, you can just really quickly turn the playback speed down a little bit and you can figure out where to go. Now, as soon as you get to the second area, I don't even stop. I usually have the Arctrician buff. So one way you can make this go a little bit faster is you don't have to kill every conduit minotaur that you see. Basically, just as long as you have the buff, just keep moving. Again, do not activate the final nodes. Rotate all the way around here. I find that this is really nice because it rotates all the enemies to the other side. You can go invisible if needs be and then activate the nodes. At this point, I'm not really killing anything. I'm really not in any danger. I'm just basically just pushing on through to the next section. The third floor is a great spot to use a sword because there is a lot more platforming involved and there's not a lot of really easy space. You can actually skip a few things just by using the sword to swipe across to the next platform. Again, I'm not activating the final node. This is a great section to kind of gauge how comfortable you are with solo content. This should be a pretty easy encounter for you to do. If you're someone who just wants to farm the armor, you could certainly do this encounter over and over and over again. Although you do get a couple of weapons here, like the machine gun, the auto rifle, and the scout. The path of where you need to go is pretty apparent. You basically just jump up. Here's another AVARICE recording. Then you're going to jump up, hit a switch, and then you'll need to jump on top of this window pane. Using a sword here will make this jump much easier. All right, you're going to want to set up your Wither Horde, an SMG, and your Taipan, and of course, before you rally the flag, Easy thing to do is put on a chest piece with linear fusion reserves, pick up the flag, and then switch to whatever chest piece you choose to use, and then you can start. You'll have a couple extra shots in your magazine. This is a very good strategy that every solid Destiny player does. All right, it's Akelous, the Siren's Current. This encounter is very similar to the rest that you've done. The mechanic's very simple. Kill a conduit minotaur and then run around, activate the nodes. What I do is start by killing the first minotaur, and then I go around and shoot all 4 of those nodes, and then I follow the path that I'm going to show here on screen. There are 4 walkways on the top of the spire and 5 nodes on each of those walkways. Once you activate the final node, a fuel rod will be activated, and there will be harpies that will spawn up on any location that still has a battery. You'll notice that I'm not going to kill them, and I'm just going to continue hitting all of the different arc nodes because they are going to respawn. Anytime I kill any of those harpies and then I activate another fuel rod, any fuel rod that has not been activated, that section will spawn up more harpies. So best idea is just to skip them all together until you're ready to fight them, which is right here. Once I've activated 3 sections and 3 walkways of all the different nodes, I'm ready to almost do boss damage, but I want to do a clean section. I don't want to mess with all these harpies that are shooting me with void energy. So the dumb, easy way to deal with this is don't kill those harpies, and then when you're ready, find a good hiding spot. This is a good spot, for example, and switch to your Trinity Ghoul. At this point, you can take out 1 of the different harpies, and then you can kill large sections of them very quickly. And if you're fast enough with this, you can keep the Arctrician buff and then activate all of the final nodes. But I would recommend that you make sure that you have your super before you're ready to do boss damage, and also that you've got all of the harpies killed. I'm skipping that final node until I get all the harpies killed. Like I said earlier, another great thing about using an exotic primary is that it can generate heavy ammo. So if you're in between phases and you need heavy ammo really easily, you can just switch to Trinity Ghoul, clear out all the harpies, and get heavy ammo at the same time. Another way to deal with the harpies is use Trinity Ghoul the entire time, and do it in this way. You'll notice that I'm moving in a clockwise fashion, moving around the different spire areas. And instead of switching to like an SMG or something like that, every time I activate a node, I'll turn to the left or the right, whichever side you choose to go. And then once you see the harpies spawn, just kill the harpies of the section you're going to go to, and then you don't have to re-kill any of the harpies. Now, you can choose to do this if you want. It's not a big deal. For me, I feel like it's a little bit slower to do this because the draw time of the bow is a little bit slower. Again, I'm not fighting those harpies up there, but you do whatever works well for you. The other thing that is nice about a bow is that the range is nice, and anytime you run into a large group of enemies, you can just get a kill and then kill all of them. That will help you stay alive a little bit easier. The biggest thing about using Trinity Ghoul is to make sure that you actually activate the nodes. Sometimes I've mistakenly shot the incorrect node using Trinity Ghoul, and since it shoots out arc energy, I think it activates, but it actually doesn't. Just make sure you watch that if you choose to use this method. All right, it's time for boss damage. So what you need to do is make sure that the Minotaur, wherever you're going to do damage, is dead. It's critical that that happens because if you don't have him dead, he's actually going to come chase you during that part, and you don't want that. At this point, if you're on a Trinity Ghoul, you need to switch back to an SMG and your Wither Horde. Then you need to get charged with light. For me, since I'm using Reaping Wellmaker, I use my class ability, aka Dodge, kill a bunch of enemies, and then I'll get an elemental well. You'll see that I'm charged with light. I hit the final node, and now I'm ready for boss damage. The boss is going to come down to whatever node you shot last, the final fuel rod. This is where you'll want to make sure that everything is locked and loaded and ready to go. At this point, he opens up all of his eyes. The faster you break the eyes, the more time you will have to do damage. Submachine gun loader is goated for this section. So if you're wearing Gerfalcon's Hallberg, you can dodge real quick, kill the final node, and then you'll have volatile rounds. Hit him with the Wither Horde and then start going at him with the Taipan. You'll see that I'm on the left-hand side of the platform. There are no holes on that left side, so you can just follow him all the way down and continue to do damage. With triple tap and Viced Stinger, you'll get a lot of reloads, but at the tail end, hit him with your super as long as you've gone close enough, and that's it. Really nice, easy way to do this with a hunter. You can certainly use an arc version of this, but for me, I like using Void and the Gerfalcon's Hallberg to make sure that I've got volatile rounds, but you don't have to. You could certainly use Orpheus rigs if you want to get a little bit more damage with your super, or you can use the Akelous chest piece if you want to stay alive a little bit longer. The big thing here is to make sure that you get consistent, smooth runs every time you do this and you never put yourself in danger. This is a great time to talk about the Giga Chads who put out videos doing 2 phases or 1 phases of defeating the bosses and stuff like that. Here's the deal. I love watching those videos too, but the truth is, for many of these speedrunners and super high-end players, it takes them tons of different runs to optimize their different builds, and also it takes tons of runs for them just to get that one clip that they can put on YouTube. I don't want to take anything away from those creators. They're great, they're fantastic, but the next time you see these awesome strategies, ask them, how many times did it take you to get that one clip that you posted? That's the reason I've got the build set up the way that I do. Is it the fastest way to kill the boss? Absolutely not. You definitely want to be using a Cataclysmic with Font of Might. That's the best way to do it. But the truth is, not everyone has access to that, right? The point of these builds is that they are fast, easy to put together, consistent, and it doesn't require you to do a ton. The biggest thing about this is getting smooth, consistent damage phases and moving smoothly, getting to boss damage. Once you have a little time and a little bit of practice and you put this together, soloing these dungeons is not nearly as hard as it seems. If it takes you an extra damage phase, no big deal. You know how to do it. You know how to stay safe and consistent. And with that strategy, Akelous is really easy to deal with. All right. We're into the second jumping puzzle, and this is where Trinity Ghoul shines. You can clear all of these different enemies ridiculously quickly just by spamming Trinity Ghoul and killing as many of them as possible. This takes very little time. All you're going to do after that is look for the Void Conduit Minotaur. Once he's dead, you'll get the Arctrician buff, and then you'll see the nodes set up in a W fashion right here. This is an easy spot to stand and shoot all of them very quickly. Jump on down to the next section. This is where a lot of people struggle, the fans. There's 2 ways to easily deal with the fans. This is kind of a cheater way. You see how I can go all the way over here on this wire, all the way into this little nook? If I go there, I won't actually get touched by the fan blades at all. You'll want to watch the path of the fans and just make sure that you're watching the timing of it and then fall down. In this section, I'm actually going to go right next to the fans to just show you how safe you can be if you use the nooks. Now you can see right here, I'm in this little spot. The fans are right next to me. They're not touching me. I'm totally fine. Be safe if you do this, if you choose to use that method, or you can use my other method where you just go to the outside perimeter of where the fans are, follow the path of the fan blades, and just go when you're ready. Yet another section where you just take Trinity Ghoul to all the enemies, nothing crazy here. Kill the Conduit Minotaur, and once you've got the Arctrician buff, stand on this spot specifically. You'll see that the red coils make kind of like a U pattern. Look up, and there's again a big W, but the middle section is way up on top underneath the platform. Shoot those 5 and move on to the second fan section, which is actually much easier to deal with than the first. Here I'm just going to use that cheat where I use the little nooks. There's really nothing to it. Just follow the path that you need to go into the nook, hang out, and the fan blades won't touch you at all. Right here, there's not a platform you need to jump onto, but there is a wire, and if you jump all the way into the little nook, you won't have to worry about it whatsoever. One more section, another Conduit Minotaur to kill. There's going to be a Hydra in the middle section by that electricity energy. Watch that electricity and make sure you don't jump into it because it will kill you if you stand there for too long. Activate the 5 nodes, and of course, if you see any Vex exploding units, just kill them first. Very easy to deal with. Underneath the stairs to the left of the path that you're supposed to go, you'll find the second secret chest. Again, any loot that you've gotten, you'll get repeats or you'll get different armor rolls from this second chest. Once you're ready, fall down all the way to the bottom, watching your jumps. You can use these different platforms on the sides here just to be safe. There's nothing worse than getting to the final boss, Solo Flawless, and then dying to a stupid jump. So just take a second, take out your sword if you need to, and stay alive. Before we talk about the mechanics, let's just talk about the different builds you can use. If you're on Void, use Akelous for damage resistance, but switch to Orpheus Rigs for boss damage. The reason is because this boss has a super damage multiplier, not a precision damage multiplier like Akelous. you want to spam your super and these rockets as much as possible. So before you hit him with your super, hit him really quickly with a Wither Horde or a grenade launcher. Again, if you hit the boss with a grenade launcher, if you're using the weaken clear buff, you'll actually reload all of your stowed weapons, so you can keep shooting your rockets pretty consistently with that if you choose to do it that way. If you're going to use an arc build, there are two main things you need to do. If you want to, you can use Assassin's Cowl for invis and melees when you're running around doing all the different mechanics. But when you're doing damage, switch to Star Eater scales for damage, hit him with the Gathering Storm super, and of course, make sure your Star Eaters are charged. During this entire section, you basically do the exact same thing you would do with a Void build. Hit him with the grenade launcher, use your super, then switch back to your grenade launcher, make sure that you get the weapons reloaded, and spam rockets and grenades as much as you possibly can during this section. But how do we even get to boss damage? Let's talk about the mechanics for the final fight, as well as how to deal with all the little annoying things that can end your Solo Flawless run. To start off the fight, there's going to be two Hydras, one on the left and the right side, that you're going to need to kill. One thing that I see a lot of people do is sticking in this room and fighting all of these enemies here, when they can smartly go to the reactor room once the door opens, and you can just take out all of the enemies in there. They won't chase you past a certain point, and in fact, you can use the reactor room after a boss damage phase to just chill out if you need to get a break or use the restroom. I talked about this in my previous video on this. If you stay on the inside towards the middle, you can actually shoot all of the enemies through this hallway here, and the boss won't come over at all. He'll actually stay over in the middle section, and you're completely free to kill whatever enemies you choose. You see, he's actually stuck over here on this side. But if I stay on the outside of either of the sides, he will start to approach and come up and try to chase you and get in the way when you're trying to do damage. This can be really annoying when you're trying to stay safe and trying to kill some of these supplicants and get the conduit minotaurs down so that you can get ready to move to the next section. In any case, once you're ready to go and you've killed one of the conduit minotaurs or you've gotten them low on life, you'll want to head into the other room really quickly. You either want to be invisible or have cleared all the enemies that are by the door. What you need to do is pick up the Arctrician buff from the conduit minotaur that you've killed and activate these 5 nodes on the columns and the front reactor door. The problem is that you have some annoying supplicants that you have to deal with, and oftentimes this is the place where a lot of people struggle. This is where I do my routine that I call doing the loop. I talked about this last time, and I want to go over it in a little bit more detail. Basically, you're going to pick up the Arctrician buff here and then spam a Wither Horde right here. As long as you're not invisible, all those supplicants will be drawn to your location, which means that you can kill them all with the Wither Horde really quickly. Let's show this to you in slow motion and go over every detail. You're going to kill the Minotaur and pick up the Arctrician buff. Now, what I'm doing is shooting and staying off to the right-hand side. This is going to draw all the supplicants over to this wall right here, right by the stairs. They're going to try and kill you as you come off the stairs, but instead, you drop the Wither Horde and you kill them before they can kill you. The goblins won't necessarily hurt you in this section, but by doing this, you can stay in cover, and you'll notice that I'm keeping the boss completely opposite of where I am. However, sometimes the supplicants don't like to cooperate, and they can often have issues like this, where you can kill one supplicant, but the other 2 supplicants chase you here at this section. One reason that might be is because you're invisible, or you haven't drawn them over by firing in that direction. There's a way to solve both of those issues if that happens. It's one thing I've been doing on some of my runs. I kill the Minotaur, and instead of going around the stairs, as long as the boss is not right next to me, I'll shoot a Wither Horde off to the right side and then turn the corner here. You might have a supplicant you need to deal with, but 1 is much easier to deal with than 3, and then you can easily shoot the 5 nodes to get to the next section. The other way to deal with them is to kill them with arc energy. You can either use a bolt shot SMG, or you can use the Assassin's Cowl and the melee for the Arc Hunter, and that will electrocute and kill all of the supplicants next to you with the arc damage, which will keep them from exploding. Once you've activated the 5 nodes in the middle, you then need to activate 2 more arc lines to get boss damage to start. Here's how it works. In the room with 4 columns, on 2 of those columns, there's going to be arc lines that are going to open. Now, that could be 2 on the left side, 2 on the right side, or 1 on each side. You don't know until you get there. It's completely RNG, but you need to activate all of the different nodes to get the boss damage phase to start. Now these wires crisscross just like the other encounters, so I'm going to give you a clean picture of where all the lines go. So there's a left side and a right side, but I like to think of them as outer and inner. For example, the ones that start on this column is going to be the outer left side because most of the nodes are going to be on the outside wall. There might be one or two exceptions, but in general, that is where you're going to go. Follow the path that you see here on screen. If it starts on the other column, this is going to be the inner left side. Most of the nodes to start off are going to be on the inner side or closer to the middle. Follow the path that you see here on screen and stand here in this position to shoot both of these nodes very easily. For the right side, if it starts on this back column, this is going to be the outer right side. Again, most of the nodes are on the outside wall. Again, there might be one or two exceptions. There is one node here that I stand on the bridge to get, or I jump up and get right here on the ground, and then you can stand opposite here to shoot those nodes. The final path is going to be the inner right side. It starts on this inside column, and this is probably the hardest one to get because there's going to be an area where you're going to need to stand pretty close to the enemies that are spawning and the boss. Follow the path that you see here on screen. Now, the trick is that the enemies and the boss are going to be trying to kill you as you activate those nodes. So the biggest thing I would say is continue to stay on the move and always keep the boss opposite of you. You can see that there's these large columns in this room here. I'm keeping the boss right opposite of me. All of the void charges that he tries to shoot at you will not be able to hit you as long as you stay opposite of them. With the supplicants in this area, you'll want to keep moving, and if you can, try to disintegrate them with whatever you've got. But that's all there is to it. You need to activate the middle nodes. At that point, follow the RNG side nodes, whichever sides they are. Once you've got both of the sides activated, the boss will be drawn into the reactor room. Then you can do damage, and during this, you just need to stay alive is the most important part. The number one thing I would say, keep moving, dodge whenever you can. If you're using a void subclass, stay invisible. If you're using arc, disintegrate as many of the enemies as you can to keep them from exploding. If you're using Star Eater scales, then you need to generate as many of those orbs as possible, not only to regenerate your super, but also to get Feast of Light ×4, which will help you to get the maximum amount of damage. If you decide to use Assassin's Cowl in conjunction with that on your Arc subclass, in case you're using that to stay alive and go invisible, just make sure that you switch at some point. You could just use Gathering Storm by itself without using Star Eater scales, but it's going to take a little bit longer. I basically just found a spot where I was safe and the boss was far away from me. I quickly swapped in my menu and made sure that I had Feast of Light, and then I was able to kill all the enemies that I needed to start getting those orbs of light. If you don't feel like you need Assassin's Cowl at all, you can basically just keep on Star Eater scales, and then you don't have to worry about flipping them. When I did my Solo Flawless, that's what I did, but your results may vary. Maybe you want to use Assassin's Cowl to stay alive, or maybe you don't have it in your inventory. But basically, do whatever works for you. Stay alive by continually moving and always making sure that you have an out. If you need to throw a grenade at some of the supplicants to keep them from killing you, that is certainly a possibility. Don't be afraid to throw your super if you need to stay alive for some reason. You can always build it back up and take more time and just kill the enemies. But when you're ready to do boss damage, make sure that you have the Arctrician buff, because if you don't, you'll need to kill the Minotaurs again so that you can hit the 5 nodes in the middle to close the reactor door. Once the boss is inside and these nodes in the middle open back up, shoot all 5 of them and then prep for boss damage. And then that's it. Chuck a grenade, chuck your super, spam rockets and grenades back and forth. If for some reason Weaken Clear does not reload your rocket, take a second and reload it, or hit another grenade shot. Make sure you've got auto loading ready to go. And even here with this not optimal boss damage, I still got him down about 1/4 of his life. I probably could have got him down a little bit more. And then as soon as you're done, be ready to run back into the reactor room and stay alive. There may be a couple of supplicants waiting for you, but if you can take them out really quickly, This room, again, will be safe. You can take a quick break if you need to, but catch your breath and get ready to do another damage phase. And that's it, everybody. Hunters, this is how I believe anybody with a little time, practice, and patience can solo flawless the Spire of the Watcher dungeon. These videos take a ton of time, from capturing footage, from actually doing the activity, and editing it in a way that makes it accessible to everybody. If you did find something to be helpful, then watching it all the way through and sharing it with your friends who might be struggling with it as well is greatly appreciated and helps to share all the content that we're making here on this channel. Of course, doing the normal thing like liking and commenting is always helpful and appreciated, and I like to read all the comments in case if people are struggling. And if you are and you have questions and you want to talk to me live or get help in other things in Destiny 2, make sure you come on over to my Twitch stream, twitch.tv/ManoDestra, where we help people with raids, dungeons, exotic quests, grandmasters, and more. Thank you all so much for watching. Good hunting, Guardians. I will see you next time in the universe of Destiny.